everybody, this is Skeet.
My name is Moshin Mikey.
Rock and Roll Roundtable.
Another presentation from our friends over at Moshman Media.
This week, 80s flashback, senior year.
Senior year, man. It's 40 year for my class this year. And we've talked about albums from the 80s and we've talked about, going back in time. But I think when we were, well, you're a year behind me in school, but when I was a senior, I had a different path. And then when you were a senior, it was a different path. And that's kind of what we're talking about because my music listening for my senior year was kind of the different year in my life. And I thought it'd be neat to see the difference between two guys that basically listened to the same music in the 80s that did music together for 20 some years. But that one year in time, my senior year, we have contrasting listening palettes for
Yes.
that year.
Yes.
So I thought it would be an interesting kind of topic. And the reason my senior year was much different than Skeeter's senior year. When I was in between junior and senior year, I found the Lord, as they say. So I was going to church. I got the baptism. I got the Bible studies rolling along. And, one of my fears as a person that was outside looking in with Christianity and all that stuff was, okay, I don't want to listen to Jimmy Swaggart and Jerry Falwell and these guys. I can't stand that music. It sucks. It's just not my, it wasn't me. So I had a friend that introduced me to the world of Christian rock and Christian metal.
Okay.
So my senior year was really focused on the classic Christian rock and metal bands. So I didn't listen to as much, the Motley Crues and AC/DCs and stuff that I'm sure are going to be on your agenda.
Yeah.
I was into a whole new world, which is cool. Very cool for, a 17-year-old kid or whatever to be exposed to. These bands can sound this good, but they can sing about Jesus and God and not have an issue with it. And, back in the 80s, the churches weren't all, they were still not all warm and fuzzy with rock and metal.
Yeah.
So you were still being kind of a rebel, but you were serving a higher purpose. And, and to yourself, in your mind, you were thinking you're doing the right thing. But thankfully, there was music there that you could relate to. And a lot of the Christian bands I'm going to talk about today, for my side of it, is compared to secular bands, as they call it, secular bands. So one of the biggest ones, the first one I really got introduced to, of course, was Stryper. I'm still a Stryper fan. They didn't really have a comparison, but Stryper has never waned. They did one album in 1990 that was not Christian lyrical. It wasn't. It was tried there. There was their attempt to go out into the secular world, and it was so bad they broke up, and they quit. Not broke up, but they quit doing stuff because they're like, no, this is not us. So they all went off and did their own projects. But man, my senior year consisted a lot of Stryper, the Yellow and Black Attack, the Soldiers Under Command album. And then my senior year was when To Hell with the Devil came
out. Okay.
And I think that was when people that weren't into Christian music kind of said, hey, this is still pretty cool.
Yeah.
They had some hits. They had a pretty good following. Of course, they had the people make fun of them because of not just because they're Christian band, but the yellow and black spandex.
Yeah,
the Stryper Bibles. It does seem a little out there now. because the Christian bands of today handle their business. Most of them, anyway. I'm not gonna say all of them, but most of them handle their business a different way now. They just
Yeah.
let the lyrics kind of speak for themselves. They don't go on preaching rants all the time. But so yeah, Striper was one for me. Another one that came up right after Striper because I had a family that kind of, I guess, it kind of took me in. I was friends with the daughter, and her older brother and her older sister were really into the religion, and her brother was a bass player for a pretty popular band, the
I think I
Christian
know who
band
you're
here.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he drugged me down the rabbit hole of Christian metal and rock that I had never knew existed.
Okay.
So Striper was like the mainstream Christian band.
Okay.
They were nowhere near the only one that was good. I mean,
No.
so many good ones.
Well,
And
just to interject, uh, I do remember around 85, 86, 87, and through there was a few kids that were into Petra.
yes, yes.
And I don't
That's
think
true.
they were
Yeah.
real heavy though, right?
No, no, they're more just rock. I wouldn't
Okay.
think they were like hard rock at all, but yeah, they were very popular. And I liked some of the Petra. I had a couple, so I think I ended up having 3 or 4 CDs from them. So I did listen to them, but they were more what I would expect. Okay,
Okay.
if you put it that way. It's kind of like if Christian music was allowed to have a rock band, it would be Petra.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, that's still respectable. They're still very good. And I listened to rock bands like that. Mylon Lefevre was a guy that was a big artist back then. He was more of a rock, straight up rock. He used to sing for the Atlanta rhythm section back in the day.
Okay.
So I mean, he had some connections. There was just really good musicians like Phil Keaggy, stuff like that. But they were all soft, and I kind of heard those before I got into where I got. With
Yeah.
Striper was like, okay, everybody kind of knows who Striper is. Then came Baron Cross. I'm like, okay, these guys are like my comparison would be Iron Maiden. They were
Yeah.
Iron Maiden sounding, but they were singing Christian stuff. I was like, very cool, not bad at all. There were so many bands though, dude. I'm telling you, the Res band was great. Barnabas, Leviticus. I mean, Philadelphia was insane. Saint. Saint was the one that snuck under my radar, and it's still, to this day, my favorite Christian metal album of all time. It's called
Wow.
Time's End. It's called Time's End, and it's my favorite above Stripers, above all of them. Classic Christian metal. Not maybe
Okay.
modern Striper might nudge it out, but yeah, these guys. I don't know what hit me about that album. It was like a Judas Priestish, but not quite musically Judas Priest. But he had the vocals kind of, sort of like Judas Priest.
Okay.
But that album's just it's just hit. It was just beautiful, and it was. I dig it. I dug it so much that it was it was in my daily rotation. It's still on my. I still listen to it quite a bit. So yeah, it's up there. Daniel Band was a little lighter, but they were more. They were probably fit in the Bon Jovi-ish kind of era. I definitely had that going on. We went to a lot of local shows, like local Christian rock bands back then. But I don't think anybody made it from around here. Bloodgood. Bloodgood was one very theatrical. They were almost over the top a little bit at times. The dude that sings, Les Carlson, sings for Bloodgood. He did until Michael Bloodgood passed away a few years
Okay.
ago. So now Les still does his own thing, does Bloodgood music too. But he had a very he was in the theater. at one
Okay.
point. He was like he sang in musicals and stuff, and it comes across, but the music was like thrash metal on some songs, almost thrashish. But when you're a young kid, or even a young adult or an adult, I guess, looking for an alternative, that was it was like a pleasant surprise that you didn't have to be in the, I don't want to say satanic because I don't believe in all that stuff, but I just think it was a nice alternative to where you can listen to positive music and
Yeah.
not have an issue with the quality being in the crapper. There was punk bands. Well, White Cross was the rad equivalent. I can't forget White Cross, and but they had punk bands like Altar Boys. They were. I thought they were great. I had their stuff. It's just. I guess comparison wise, what would you be listening to in your senior year compared to what I've been talking about? Because you
Oh,
probably don't know any if except Striper maybe, and you did see Baron Cross with me. You
yeah,
did do that.
yeah. It was secular all the way, baby. Whatever was on MTV in '87. A lot of Headbangers Ball. A lot of the hair bands. They weren't hair bands then. They were just they considered that all heavy metal.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was, and I hadn't even gotten into like Maiden until later on. So it was all the Motley Crue and the Cinderella and the Poison and any album they had out. So look what the Cat Dragged In got played quite a bit senior year,
yeah,
quite a bit, and we were and woo and
yeah, yeah,
and all that fun stuff. So
yeah,
it was a lot of Motley. Girls, Girls, Girls came out right when we graduated, so that was on heavy rotation. Uh, I mean, still a lot of the staples on MTV. So even the popular rock, pop rock, or whatever you want to call it, the Cyndi
yeah.
Lauper and the fucking Prince, and you know, but my group that I hung out with, it was all the hair band stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that was me until just that short period of time
Yeah,
that I got bumped into uh, wanting to. I mean, I wanted to do it. I'm not saying anybody pushed it on me, but I wanted to. I got the alternative without having to listen to those bad, evil, secular people. That's what I thought back then, of course.
yeah. Well,
But when you had bands that kind of covered every kind of genre I listened to, I mean, had the Tourniquets and Bride. They were more of the progressive kind of stuff. That was nice to have an alternative.
yeah.
And ever since then, I did, it kind of broke the mold, even though I got out of the faith, I guess you would say. I got out of that in such a heavy, hardcore way. But man, I still listen to all that stuff. And I became familiar with the notion that it doesn't matter if they're Christian band or not.
Yeah.
So that was I guess my senior year was a breakthrough moment in that way because I still have all these bands like Theocracy and Narnia, these like new Theocracy people, I didn't know this, but Theocracy is a Christian band. I knew they were, but they're very big in the world of power metal, progressive. Power metal people love them, and it doesn't matter a bit that they're Christian. Kind
Okay.
of like deathcore. Deathcore people do not care that Impending Doom is a Christian band because they're so ridiculously brutal.
Okay.
But their one album was Nailed Dead Risen. They don't
Okay.
shy away. They don't shy away from any of their songs. You listen to the lyrics; it's all there. They don't try to scoot around it. They just don't go out and say, hey, here's like Striper did with, here's a Bible from us, no
Yeah.
Bibles in it. But they make their point known. And some of the bigger Christian bands in the world today are like Skillet. Skillet's a big time. They're very popular, man. POD. POD's known as, one of the bigger Christian bands. But when I was in school, you had bands like Holy Soldier, and they were trying to fit the hair band. They were trying
Okay.
to be in the hair band. So Holy Soldier was not my favorite. They didn't compare good enough for what I could just at some point in my senior year, even after all that good Christian music and stuff I was into, at some point I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that music can't, with all the stuff that was going on with like Ozzy's lawsuits about
Yeah.
suicide solution and this stuff. I learned very good lesson that music doesn't persuade you. It doesn't tell you what to do. I can listen to Slayer sing about the altar of sacrifice and praise hail Satan and all that. And I know that I don't buy into it. I just like the music. And that I think has went from guys like me that were in the Christian world saying that about secular music or whatever, to people in the secular world looking at Christian metal saying, I don't care what they're saying, that's badass. Now, and that's what the Christian base gets mad about, though, which is funny because sometimes they get mad about that because they don't think people are getting the message because the music's too heavy, it's too,
Okay. All
it's
right.
scary. And it's like, no, if you're giving kids, you're giving people alternative that if they don't want to hear praise, they'll sing. They just don't want to hear it. They don't care about it. That they have another option that says, good things, and it can still be as heavy as the stuff that they have the choice to listen to. So as a senior in high school, when I would listen to Holy Soldier or Guardian, that was my kind of attempt to stay relevant with hair metal until I figured it out that, okay, Tom Kiefer's not converting me to Satanism. You know, it's just like you have to have your own belief system, and music shouldn't change what you think.
Yeah.
And the back, of course, when we were kids, our senior year, we were both about the same. Well, we're a year apart. We know backmasking was a thing back. They talked about it, all the time. They had you play Led Zeppelin backwards. It's
Yeah.
full,
Well,
Hail
you had
Satan.
you had a lot of stuff going on in it around 86
Yeah,
and 87. I mean, you
yeah,
had where the PMRC
yeah.
reared its ugly head around that fucking time, and there were a lot of people that had to go in front of Congress and were fighting to keep the metal alive. Blackie and fucking D. Snyder.
A D.
They're
Snyder, yeah.
up talking in front of these senators and stuff. And I listened to Wasp. Last Command was like what 86. So I was
Probably
still
around, yeah.
listening. I was still listening to that. Twisted Sister had what was it? Stay Hungry
Stay Hungry was the one I listened to
yeah,
the year
was
before.
right around that fucking time. So I was still listening to that, and I think what was it? They had their next one come out.
Come Out and Play. Was that before that?
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think it
remember.
might have been
Twisted
right at
Sister.
the end of 87, it maybe 88. So,
Yeah,
and Kiss was still out there.
yeah.
So, that 80s era Kiss was out there. So there was a lot of battle going on with parents and what kids were listening to. Oh, you're listening to that devil
Yeah,
music. So I could
yeah.
understand why, it was even hard for the Christian bands to kind of make their mark because, well, we're kind of like them, but we're talking about God and stuff. So,
It's
there
tough.
it was very there was a lot of trials and tribulations in that fucking era for music.
Right. And then to throw in the fact that, I'm a teenager, you get really confused when you hear all that stuff. And then you have the people in the church, not that they're meaning ill will or nothing, but they're telling you to stay absolutely away from that stuff.
Yeah.
And at first I protested concerts. Like, I mean, you
Oh,
wouldn't believe some of the stuff I did. I burned all my albums, dude.
oh my
I burned
god. Ah!
my whole
Yeah.
vinyl collection. I mean, I'm going out just tell everybody because it's something that happened. But
Yeah.
I was into what I believed, I very much so. And it was like, okay, I got the alternative music, which is nice, but it took me a while to figure out, hey, these people, they don't control my brain.
Yeah.
Now I can listen to whatever for, I don't have to take it to heart. Now, if I want to take like the Christian lyrics to heart, I can. But still, a lot of people I know that are in the secular world only, they will listen to bands like August Burns Red today. And they don't care that they talk about Christian stuff. They don't care. They like the music. They like the melody. They even like the vocal or the lyrics at times. They think, oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, way he said that, blah, blah, blah. But like when I was in school, these bands that were Christian bands, they never made it to the top, like Striper and but some of these bands like Messiah Prophet was an insanely talented band. And it just makes you wonder, okay, what would have happened if they would have said, the heck with it. We're gonna go out on the strip like everybody else and play and just talk about girls and drinking and stuff, which they had every right to do. They chose a different way.
Yeah.
Not saying good, bad, or indifferent, but their music was really good. But yeah, it's kind of a shame that they got put in a box. Just kind of like Slayer does too, though. You really think about it. Slayer's music was always considered this demonic, horrible stuff. Tom Araya is a devout Catholic. It's like he's just writing about the bad stuff in the world. It doesn't mean he goes home and has an altar set up. And you can't take everything literally.
Well, there was
I,
a lot of that. There was a lot of that brainwashing going on. You
yeah,
know.
what? I mean, I wouldn't even, for my case, it wasn't even so much the brainwashing. It was just, you got to let people just, you got to let people make their own decisions and they have their own convictions about life. And there was a lot of music that, like Jerusalem was a band that I wouldn't listen to today. But back then, it was like, okay, you're the alternate, like Yes or something. It was
Okay.
more progressive. They were from over there in Europe somewhere. But I mean, do I listen to them now? No. But at the time, it was very cool that they were there. And when I came up, even my senior year, which was what we're trying to hit on. So I was more into the classic, what you would call classic Christian metal now.
Okay.
And a lot of those bands I talked about. And then I also had a local band that I think you remember probably. It was guys that used to be in like a bigger cover band in town. They all went to church, got into church and were playing in this band. And I was following them around and they were doing originals. So I felt more comfortable because it's like, hey, I'm still able to go out and enjoy music. I don't have to
Yeah.
get bashed. So my senior year was a big, big difference from my junior year, where I listened to Dokken and Queensryche and all the normal hair bands and 80s bands and drank a lot, smoked a lot of weed, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then my senior year was like, okay, I think it prepared me. That's what I say. I don't want to sound too inspirational speaker. I'm not Tony Robbins or anything here, but I think it prepared me for life ahead. It's like it made me realize that music is music. It's good. If it's good, it's good. And you can't let lyrics of somebody else's volition tell you what to do and influence you enough to go do stupid shit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Poison. They say, oh, Poison, these guys dressing up like women and they're telling you to go out and have sex and all this stuff. It's like every teenager in the country's thinking about having sex. They didn't need some guys dressed up and with hairspray and makeup on to tell them, hey, go out and look for women. We all did it. It
Yeah.
was just, they were singing about having a good time. The Christian bands were singing about having a good time doing it their way
Yeah.
and how they felt like this was the most important thing. The most important thing for most kids in their senior year of high school that listened to Poison back in and when you were in there was getting laid or
Yeah.
drinking or whatever. And it's like, okay, so you had different priorities, but you could still cross the boundaries.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would feel out of place listening to Messiah Prophet. Why should I feel out of place listening to Bon Jovi? It didn't.
Well, like I said, it was a turbulent era, and
Yeah.
actually, the term critical thinking or critical thinker, you know, that's some of the stuff that you had to reflect on. I mean, you were becoming an adult. You were getting ready to go into the adult world. And so, you were
Yeah.
open to experience things being
Oh yeah.
a young adult. I want to do this. I want to do that. So you got all this input coming all over the place. And I never had that exposure.
Right.
It was all what you saw on MTV, and I wanted to be in a fucking rock band. But I still didn't have a lot of the skills, so I was still basically a beginner guitar player. But it's like you see those guys, and you went, that's I want to do that. I want to do that, and so your mind's going 100 miles a minute. I mean, 18,
Yeah.
don't know what I want. 18, Alice Cooper
It's a
sums
true
it up,
song.
and it's fucking, it's like, yeah, it was basically true because you're just getting hit with all this adult stuff, and some people lost their minds and never got it back, and some people
Yeah.
actually started seeing the world and what the hell was going on, and you made
Yeah.
your opinions.
And there's a lot of people that were in those bands when I was a senior that crossed over lines. They said, well, they had their reasons why they thought they were getting held back by their own support systems. And there's bands I found 20 years, 40 years later that were there in the 80s that I didn't know,
Yeah,
that are really good bands. I'm like, they just didn't get their due. But I can do that with secular world too.
yeah,
There's plenty of bands that we even go over them at times that we missed completely. The Londons and stuff. We had to do Virgin Ears. There's one Rage of Angels that the early '90s that I mean it wasn't my senior year, but those guys were huge, but I never heard of them. But they're really good. They're like a throwback to the '80s. And there's so many good Christian bands that just some people don't even realize they're Christian, which I think is good. I do. I think
yeah,
bands like Switchfoot, when they had that song, learn we were meant to live for so much more. It was a real catchy song in the like the early 2000s or something. And no, nobody even really cared that they were just considered a band. And then it seemed like when they got out that they were a Christian band, they fell off. It's like
well,
why? I just don't. And that doesn't affect them because they have their own convictions they're worried about.
yeah,
They're not going to worry about whether or not somebody calls them Christian band or not. And a lot of these bands are that way today. But back in the day, it was more headbutting back then
yeah,
because of the culture we were in.
yeah,
So, yeah, being a senior in high school and being a new Christian was tough. But that music was what I could lean on because it was like I'm fighting an uphill battle here. I'm trying to stay my path that I'm on, that I've chosen, and I found this wonderful thing to help me through. But it just seemed like, for me anyway, it just seemed like they never got their due, even though they've been around for 40 years now. Barren Cross. We went to the
Yeah.
Barren Cross. For me, I thought that place was going to be absolutely tits and assholes together, smushed. I thought that was going to be a sold out show. And you could have heard a pin drop between
Yeah.
songs. It was so great to see them because I waited so long. I didn't get to see them in their heyday.
Yeah.
But it was a little depressing for me. It really
Yeah.
was. It was just like, man, such a good band. They just don't get. Striper didn't even do extremely well when they played there. I mean, granted, it was Memorial Weekend when they played there,
Yeah.
but it was like, yeah, man, this Kings of Christian metal, but they were on MTV. They had all these hits on MTV. Why are they not getting anybody to come to their show? It doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me. It still don't. I mean, our area has a Christian metal. They have a Christian metal festival every
Yeah.
year. Okay. And I've never had the chance to go. It's always been on like a Labor Day weekend or something. It's like it's hard to balance your life at home
Yeah.
with going to like a festival like that when your wife or kids or nobody knows who the hell any of these bands are. They don't want to go. And I
Yeah.
don't have any friends that are really into the Christian metal a lot, maybe one. But I thought about going this year because it's on it's like on an off weekend. It's not on a holiday weekend. But I've heard that that place never is packed. And there's some of the best bands, the Christian bands ever. Deliverance. All three versions of Petra are going to be there this year. All three versions. And Petra was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. They
It's like,
were.
yeah, I mean, Saint's been there. I've missed Saint when they were there last time. I've kicked myself. But, like I said, after the Barren Cross show, I was like, I don't think this festival is going to rake people in like I thought it. Yeah, I think it should. And the saddest part is people come from Iowa. They come from Nebraska. They come from old California had one, at the last year's festival. I remember reading that. So they come from all over the country because this is a huge Christian metal. And
Yeah.
nobody around here even said, who? Who's that? What? I don't know who they are. But that was my senior year. A lot of telling people, hey, man, I got the new Messiah prophet. Who?
Who?
What's that?
Yeah.
What kind of crap is that? Prophet
Yeah.
what? But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the musical part of my senior year, and I learned a lot about the world in that time. So yeah, I just think our differences were so vast, but it's like it all melded back together. I mean, you listen to Christian music. If it's on, if you think it's good, you're just going to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's a lesson you learned. I learned that, yeah, they might be singing about the bowels of hell, but it doesn't mean that they're trying to drag me down there with them.
Yeah.
It's just music, man. It's
Yeah.
their expression. This is their expression. When I started writing songs, I had my own expression, and as I got farther along, the language cleaned up towards the end.
Yeah.
I wrote about more subject matter that was expanded a little bit. And I think that's what people, when they get older, they just realize, hey, they can sing about God if they want to, or they can sing about Satan if they want to. I just want to enjoy. I want to enjoy
Yeah.
the music. And if I take the words to heart, so be it. I can be a Christian guy or I can be a devil worshiper, whatever you want. But 90% of us are just like, yeah, that jams. I
Yeah.
I don't really care that
Well,
they're washed in the blood or if they're not washed in the blood. Don't matter.
it took going through that time for acceptance. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So we had to have that chaos at that around that time in order for people to be accepting of, hey, it's just music. because now a good song's a good song. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you
Yeah,
don't get
it's
you don't get the blowback like you used to.
yeah.
No.
So I mean, that's actually good. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
it
glad it
is.
worked itself out. Yeah, it really is nice that it worked itself out because a lot of these bands that deserve to be big are just they're just called a band now. You
Yeah,
don't have to label them a Christian band. POD, a lot of people didn't even know were a Christian band,
yeah. I had
And a,
no
lo-
clue.
and a lot of these bands are just people that are in the band are Christian. They don't label
Yeah,
themselves Christian metal. So yeah, there's a big variable to it now. It's like, there could be one satanic guy in a band. They don't call it a Satanist band because one guy's,
yeah,
so that's kind of the way it could be with a Christian guy that maybe he writes the lyrics,
yeah,
but he doesn't want the rest of the band to have to follow hey, you got your own opinions. We're just here to
yeah,
play music, which is a beautiful thing. It
yeah,
really is. But yeah, go back and check out some 80s classic Christian metal. I think some people our age, Gen Xers especially, that missed it because they didn't want to be classified, ooh, listening to that God
yeah.
stuff. Just go back and listen to the music for what it is. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And in today's world, man, there's so many great Christian bands that you don't even have to know they're Christian. Just get a playlist and close your mind and say, okay, I'm just going to listen to it. Yeah. I hope some people do because you're missing a lot of good music just because it's put in its own little shelf box, whatever.
Yeah.
Man, it's all good.
Well, Mikey, that ought to wrap it up. I mean, congratulations to all the seniors out there. I mean, this will be airing a little bit after people been graduating, so
Yeah, it'll be about when they're getting ready to go to college, but they'll just look at it as okay. Wait, look back on your senior year before you go off to school again and say, yeah, I can see what they're saying. We made a lot of life uh, defining moments happened in my senior year. And I'm better for it. What I will say about my senior year, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are going, "What? Mosh and Mikey was a Christian guy?"
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
yes, 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 I am. I'm still am. So, but I'm not. I'm not going to judge you for anything you want to think or believe. So that's the way it is. Christian metal, still metal, man. It still rocks. So,
All right, let's wrap this up, Mikey.
yep.
All right, this is Skeet.
Mosh and Mikey.
See ya.
Double peace out.